Nung inumida ako rito, akala ko minumura ako eh. Pecha pala. Okay. That's how foreign this whole concept was to me. Tapos sinabi sa akin, 20 slides. Okay, fine. That's manageable. But 20 seconds each lang, ha? Okay. So what's it going to be about? Anything you want. Pwedeng personal story na lang. Because, basically I tell stories for a living, but, I don't really say much about myself and my docus. So I decided to tell a short personal story about humility, and hopefully more than a few of us can learn something about my own humble experience, my humbling experience. But basically, I want to start by saying I feel like I'm a very lucky person. I haven't had a hard life. I work with great people. These are some of the people I work with. I think Noy Guanang is also in the audience, my executive producer. Yes, Noy. I worked 10 years as an obscure newspaper reporter. Nobody recognized me on the street. I could blend in at rallies, etc. Nobody knew who I was. It was a great life. Now people kind of recognize me. I end up on billboards. It's a different kind of life, no? I hardly, sometimes we can pretend to be the Beatles. I'm John Lennon. Si Jay Turok, yung gusto niya nakapaat palagi eh, kaya siya na lang si George. So this also ended up on a billboard. Basically, this is my way of saying, this is my life. It's very public. I'm on television. Everybody watches television. But one of the greatest things I love about my job is not really the fame or being recognized. It's being able to interact with so many different kinds of people. Here I'm, and I shoot them with a camera, of course. No? Because I got tired of having arguments with my cameraman. Shoot this, shoot that, and he wanted to shoot something else. So yeah, I'm going to shoot them myself. This one was the previous one was with an Aita in Pampanga, and I get to shoot rock stars and interview them. Like my idols from Juan de la Cruz, si Pepe Smith and Mike Hanopol, one of the highlights to me of my career, in my opinion. I get to meet people like Cory Aquino at some luncheon at an embassy. This is in the last year of her life. Without this job, I probably wouldn't be able to meet people like this. Recently I've interviewed her son, who's now president. Of course, there's a showbiz aspect of being in television. I recognize the oldies more than the younger ones. Once I attended a lunch and I didn't recognize Claudine Barreto for some reason, and people around me thought I was really strange. And I recognize Eddie Garcia though. I get to hang out with people like Miriam Kiambao. She's not normally dressed like that. This happened at the shoot. I had several shots to choose from. The others she was fully clothed, but this was more interesting, I guess, for this kind of audience. I get to do cool stuff like ride military choppers with my cameraman Egay Navarro right there, and that's former governor of Isabela, Grace Padaca. We were inspecting illegal logging in her province by taking aerial footage. We were doing some going over the entire Palanan wilderness and seeing what was being denuded, and we did a documentary about it. I also get to ride my bike all over the place with a camera. My cameraman designed that rig on the handlebar so it could carry a Panasonic P2 camera. And then there's also a rig there at the rear tire for a camera so they can shoot the pedals. And in Bohol a few years ago during the elections, I biked around with this candidate who was also biking around. He was running for governor, and I realized he was hard of hearing. And anyway, okay, this is leading to my humility story. I did a night dive in a place near Camiguin, Mantigue, and right after the dive, I suddenly felt half of my face grow. I couldn't move half of my face, and I thought I was having a heart attack or a stroke or something. And here's basically how I looked after my trip to the emergency room. I thought I had some kind of brain damage. I thought I was going to die. I was actually on a boat when I was attacked, and then I thought I had the bends. If you died, you know what the bends are. So I went to a military hospital. I think it's Viluna, and I had myself put in that hyperbaric chamber for 36 hours because the bends are potentially fatal. The strange thing is, like a week later, I had to go to a UN-sponsored conference to speak. And I was slurring because half of my face was paralyzed. So I couldn't see, I couldn't move half of my face, I couldn't eat. When I ate, I was slobbering, food, liquid would go down my mouth. And it was a very, very humbling experience. I was with people, diplomats and, other journalists, etc. Luckily, I had never met any of them before, and maybe I'll never see any of them again. But it was, from being on television sometimes makes you feel a bit egocentric. Sometimes you think the world is life is all about you. But this made me realize that anything can happen to anyone, and basically this happened to me. I couldn't back out of this conference. I had to show up. This was in Vienna, Austria. So it was I had to interact with so many different kinds of people while slurring. I had to explain I wasn't drunk. I had something called Bell's palsy. Bell's palsy, which is a neurological disorder that usually happens to pregnant women. I don't know why it happened to me. But basically, it was a very rare disorder. Luckily, I recovered after a couple of months, and I went to visit these blind children. And I started looking for other people who, I did a documentary about how others had overcome adversity. And, I don't want to over-romanticize what I went through. I'm fully recovered now. I'm very lucky. I feel, but I feel in looking back, I feel very happy for that experience because it was a very humbling experience. And that last slide was about a family of dwarfs that I visited, and they became very good friends of mine, Perry Berry and his daughter, who's also a dwarf who's going to graduate valedictorian of her class this year. Thank you very much.